It's highly, highly important, not just for, police, but in all aspects, especially emergency care practitioners. And I emphasize that also because police officers, nurses, doctors, in cases of emergencies, those are the first responders to such situations. Now, what do you do if you attend to a deaf person? How do you communicate to them? So it's very important that each and every person in whatever capacity, whether they're able to just learn sign language, especially the basic signs, because it takes nothing from you, really. You just need to learn a few signs, how to say please, sorry, help me, thank you, hello. Those are the very little things that can make somebody smile and feel like they are noticed. So doing that also assists them in their day-to-day activities. I mean, I always look at these scenarios where deaf people get arrested, for example. So a police officer, if they don't know how to sign the Miranda rights, then that deaf person cannot be held in custody. Yeah. So what happens usually, especially for us in Namibia, is we are also being a little bit unlawful on that end, where we have to keep the person in custody and wait for an interpreter to come so that we can read their rights. But already we've breached our laws by not reading their Miranda rights upon arrest. So those are simple examples that I can give just off the bat on the necessity of learning sign language across the board, no matter what job you are in. Even for family members, as simple as that. We have relatives who have deaf members in their families, but they don't even communicate. So basic things like that are really the true core of what we are doing in the deaf community.
And what are some common misconceptions about sign languages that you've encountered?
One of the weirdest ones was that apparently sign language is the same everywhere, which it totally isn't. There is, various aspects to sign language. It is a language on its own, number one, because it has its own structures, grammatic, syntax, etc. Same as English, French, and every other language. But what makes it so unique is that it's with the hands now and not necessarily verbal. So it's a non-verbal language. And secondly is that we have Namibian Sign Language, we have South African Sign Language, we have Kenyan Sign Language, British Sign Language, American Sign Language. And the reason for that is because sign language is a language that is developed by deaf people for deaf people. So, we all have different views and different perspectives all over the world. So the same way we see a basket, for example, is not the same way that Europeans would see a basket because of the various uses. So the signs differ, they definitely do. But what is unique is deaf people globally understand each other. So for us, like for me, in my case, when I met the president of the World Federation of the Deaf, he's American, and I've met other deaf Americans as well. It was so interesting to see the big differences between our signs, and it all comes from culture. So that is also one of the things. So sign language is not the same all over the world.
It's not the same?
No.
So how does it contribute to the cultural identity of deaf communities here in Namibia?
Right. So deaf people in Namibia are way more unique, and they live by their own culture, right? And what that means is what necessarily would be private to us would be so open to them. For hearing people, we don't necessarily discuss things in depth as, we would like them because of privacy and the little taboos that have been going around. But deaf people are so open and so communicative, and we cherish lengthy conversations. Even just a simple hello will go all the way from what were you doing last year? And so there's a huge uniqueness, and there's a certain way that deaf people do things that hearing people would not necessarily do.
Yeah. And what are some of the biggest challenges facing sign language users today?
Oof, that's a huge one. Yeah. mainly because there's so many challenges. And I think access is what myself and Paul Nanyeni, and every other deaf advocate, that's what we mainly try to push forward is access. Access to everything, access to information, access to healthcare, access to, basic rights. And when someone is stripped of their right to access, it makes it so difficult to continue living their day-to-day activities. Because, for example, just the trending topic right now on tax returns. I have not seen a video of anybody, signing what that means and what we should be doing about that. But so already, access to information regarding tax returns is already not provided to the deaf community. So until we all, stand up and say, look, this is the situation. I want to play a part in helping deaf communities feel included. It's like going to a totally different country and not knowing how to speak the language. That's how it is. That's exactly how it feels for deaf people. It's like they feel like, they're in their own little world and they're put aside. And it's been like that for so long that they're used to it. But until somebody like myself or somebody like Paul, even you, Marcello, until one of us, stand up, or all of us stand up and say, look, how can I play my part in being inclusive? Then only things are going to change.
Yeah. And how can organizations and also policymakers better advocate for the rights of deaf individuals?
So simple. Start learning sign language, number one. Yes, because you cannot want to assist people if you don't know how to communicate with them. That's the first thing. And secondly, it is so important that you have a deaf person in your department. And give them access to facilities, give them access to opportunities. Especially from school level, in the education system, there needs to be high provision of deaf enrollment so that, we have lawyers and judges who are deaf, people who can assist a whole large community of people. That is, I think, the main goal right now is that we all learn sign language so that we can be totally inclusive and help deaf people feel like they are a part of us.
Definitely. And also, what role do you think educational institutions should play in promoting sign language?
Education is the biggest sector where change can happen very rapidly as well. So if we start with the education sector, where we can say, my dream is always to have sign language in all the schools, and not just for deaf children, but for everybody, because it can just so happen, there are many ways that one can become deaf, and it does not matter what age you are. It can come at any time in any shape or form. And in order, for you to stop tackling a problem as it comes along, rather be proactive. And I think if we are so proactive in the education sector by saying we're going to take sign language teachers, we're going to put them in mainstream schools, and hearing children will also learn sign language, just like we gave them French and Portuguese and Swahili and, Xhosa and all those fun foreign languages. Like, let's also include sign language in that and teach them Namibian sign language, which is one of the things that I love some schools in Windhoek are also doing. They have some sign language programs, after school programs during the school as well. So I commend them as well for that, because that's a start. And then from there, we go all the way to varsity. And, that is where you will see a dream where a deaf person will not feel like they can't communicate to somebody because they feel like this person will not know what I'm saying or they can't communicate back to me. But if you've done sign language in school, and you have some idea and deaf culture, etc., like you would be able to recognize and have a deaf friend and make them feel like they're part of us. We are such an auditory world, so it's time we also stop talking so much and start signing.
Action, yes.
Yes.
And just finally, Linea, what changes do you hope to see in the recognition of the use of sign languages in the next decade?
Oof, I hope this does not take a decade, actually. But I really, really hope to see a Namibia where sign language is part of our official language, number one, because from then on it will make everything else so much easier. And that's the drive that Paul, myself, and the big names that are currently pushing and driving this agenda in the deaf community is that we want to see sign language a recognized language in Namibia. And from then on, we will push it to education sector where we want to realize the dream of, having sign language as a subject, either as a choice or as a second language in schools. And from then on, we want to have the dream of a Martha's Vineyard where everybody can sign. Really, that's my hope and my dream and my vision for Namibia in hopefully less than a decade.